I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. On today's episode of What's on the Workbench, I've got a project in mind to use this leather on. This leather came from Montana Leather. It's the Vaqueta vegetable tan leather, pre-dyed in brown. And there are 6 colors altogether. I'm going to set up over here on the workbench. I've got a fun project today to work on, and I'll let you follow along. Appreciate having you in the shop with me today. So today's project is going to be covering this book, making a removable cover for this book. And I've done it before where I didn't have the book. To me, that's a little bit more nerve-wracking because there's some things as far as how flexible is the book to get the cover on it. This one's fairly flexible, so that results in the fact that I can have a deeper pocket on the inside, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. The other thing is the thickness of the hardback cover on it. All those things go into account. Now, the easiest measurement is the height of it. So it's 9.5 inches. Now, the measurement that some people struggle with is how big the panel needs to be the other direction to encompass the book. And what I did is I took a strap of leather that's similar thickness to what we're going to be using. And then I just use that to measure around the book. Once I get to this side, I'll put a pencil mark here, open this up, and measure it. So I come up with, it's right at 14 inches. Now, the next thing we need to figure is with the height of it being 9.5 inches, how much do we need to allow for the stitching of the inner pocket to this, so that there's room to insert the book in there. And some of that's going to depend on how stiff the leather is. And this vegetable tan leather at 9 ounces, it's fairly stiff. So I need to give a little bit of extra room there. So what I'm going to do, if it's 9.5 inches, you could go 10.5. That might be a little bit big. So I'm going to add 3/4 of an inch. So I need 10.25, and with the so that allows, let me just recap that. If it's 10.25, that gives me 3/8 of an inch on both sides. With a 1/4 inch seam allowance and an 1/8 of an inch to give me room to get the book put in there, that'll work fine. And since I've got the book, and that's a vegetable tan, if I needed to, I could introduce some moisture to it and get a little bit of stretch in there to get this book inserted. Obviously, you don't want to leave it in wet leather, but you could do that and stretch it out with like a bone folder. So 3/4 of an inch to that's 10.25. So if I add 3/4 of an inch to my 14, I need 14 3/4. And that'll give me that same 3/8 of an inch on the outside with the seam allowance there. So let me set this out of the way. So I've got this panel that I cut off of the shoulder area of that hide, and I'm going to cut it now to that size. And this, I just cut kind of a rough piece here. It's about 10.5, and so we've got about usable here about 18. So what I'll do is I'll square up one end off of this edge here. We'll cut it to length. I scooted it over just another 1/4 of an inch. It makes me a little nervous. This leather is pretty thick here. So I'm more like 15 here. Roll this thing, get some of this curve out of it, quit fighting this thing. All right, so this will make up the outside of the book cover here, like this. We're going to be tooling this, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce a little bit of casing to this. In the meantime, while that's casing, we'll cut a couple of strips that will be the pocket on the inside of this book. And I said earlier, the width of this pocket is a little bit determined by getting the cover on the book. And if I'm not abusing the binding by coming to this far, then that's where I'll figure, putting that in there. And I've got, I can go with a 4-inch pocket here and still get this in there. Sometimes on older books, this would be abusive to the binding and you wouldn't want to do that. So you can make a narrower pocket to hold that. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside. I'll start casing that. And I'm going to grab some more leather to go on that pocket. Now you can use lots of different leather on the inside, but I happen to have this same leather. It comes, all 6 colors come in 2 weights. This is the 8 to 9 ounce, and there is a 2 to 3 ounce of the same. So I'm going to pull it out, and I'll cut me a strip that is 2 of them. That's 4 inches by the 10 1/4, and then we'll come back. All right, so obviously if you wanted to just sew these on here, you would have a simple leather cover, do your edges and you'd be done. But I'm going to tool this. Now, on pre-dyed vegetable tan leather, this inside here, it would concern me a little bit of potentially getting color transfer to the book that's in there, of it just spending its life in there and moving. Is that a concern for you? It might be or may not be. But with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and treat the inside of this with some Resling, and I'm going to slick it down and get that sealed, the inside of all of these. And I'm going to stay away from this 1/4 inch on the outside where I'm going to be gluing this on there. So I don't know if you want to follow along in that. I'll show you briefly setting up here for it, but there's really nothing to it other than putting the clear finish on there, and then I'll burnish it down with my glass slicker. My main goal is just to get it sealed so that I don't have to worry about color transfer. But I'll slick it down a little bit as well. So I'll be back when I'm done doing that. So I've got the leather here. I almost forgot to do it. I don't know why. I hate this step. But anyway, I put tape on the back here. I suppose you could leave that on there and not worry about color transfer. I don't like the idea of tape there. I feel like the edges would maybe release. Then you end up with maybe adhesive on your book. So I'll remove this once I'm done with my tooling, and I'll slick the back with Resling. So I've got this lightly cased. Before I get into the heavy tooling, I will continue to add a little bit more moisture to this. Now, with all that said, you've got a few options. You could tool the front and back differently, or you could tool them the same and leave the binding untooled. But I think what I'm going to do on this one, I'm going to tool the whole thing. So what I need to do is I need to lay out my area, know where my stitch line is and all of that. So if you remember, I talked about having a 1/4 inch stitch line around here, and I think I'm going to then have the stitches another 1/4 inch of untooled leather, and then my pattern. So I need to just set this to 1/2 of an inch, and then lightly scribe around here, creating my tooling window. And you need to think about, do you want a square corner on your tooling or do you want a rounded corner? And if, like I said before, if you don't want to tool it, you could just apply these and wet form the spine here to help it wrap on the book, and you could be done with it with edge work. But I'm going to tool it. And if you wanted to tool and not have as much tooling, you could obviously tool a design in a corner, or you could put initials on it. I mean, there's lots of options. So I won't get into trying to explain every option because you probably have more ideas than I've got. So I'm just going to lay here my 1/2 inch. I stay back from the corners till I make sure I know where I'm at there. But I'm going to create my 1/2 inch, tooling window, so to speak. I'm just going to do what I call a simple basket weave, and I'll show you the process. I'm not going to show you tooling all of it. I'll just show you how I lay it out and create it, and then and we'll go from there. I'm going to do a 1-inch grid on it. And what I want is the pattern to be at a 45-degree angle here. Let's see, do I like 45 degrees? I think I do. And instead of creating lines and then cutting the lines, I'm just going to use the straight edge with my swivel knife and cut a line across here. I'm not going crazy deep because this is only 9-ounce leather. Now I have that, I'll just continue across here, just moving this straight edge and cutting this 1-inch grid. Okay, so now I need to create the lines going the other way on here. And what I'm going to do for that, I'm going to set this on here, find my 45-degree angle, and I'm going to see, does it line up? And it does. And the nice thing is I don't end up with funny squares down here. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to then cut here, starting at that corner, and come down to this corner here, like that. Keep your swivel knife sharp. Just a couple strops. So I'm going to do that all the way across here. And so I'm not focused as much on this side as I am this cut corner here. I'm going to line those up. Sometimes when you lay a pattern on to the next one and you work across there, it's possible to end up moving this way instead of completely parallel. And at this point, it really doesn't matter so much. What matters more is where this lines up on these points. So I'll finish this out, and then I'll come back when we're ready to tool. So I'll finish this. I'll add a little bit of moisture to it, and then we should be good to start tooling. And this is a tooling project or a tooling pattern that goes pretty quickly. I want to talk about this just for a minute here. You know, when you have experienced people around you teaching you, I'm not saying that's me, and you should listen to their advice. And Don Gonzalez in the class, he told several people, you know, do your border first. And he talked about one of his employees that he had that did tooling for him, and he always did the border last. And he said, you know, in the end, his stuff looked good, so I was okay with it. But, you know, I'm sitting here thinking, you know, why does a guy that's been doing it for, I bet he's been tooling for 40 years, you know, why does he say do it first? And I'll tell you what I've learned in the tooling is that, especially on this basket weave, I did the tooling last on them, and the edges I did not like, the border. And what I found is that when I had all this other tooling done, and I'm working across here, I had less or different resistance on this side of the leather than this one. And what I mean by that is you'd be tooling along here and you get to an area where it's tooled down, and the tool then moves this way more because it's tooled down over there. That creates a wobbly edge here. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's a tip, in my opinion, that I've started tooling my bevel on my border, especially on something like this, first, and that's the reason why. And the other thing that I do is I make sure that, well, for me anyway, I want a lighter cased leather when I do this border here, and that also helps keep this edge here from wanting to creep this way and create a pushed up edge along here. So it's cased, but it's lighter, and once I get this border finished, then I'm going to case it some more, and then we'll get into the tooling here in the field. So I just thought I'd share that with you. That's something that in my very short period of time tooling, that's what seems to work well for me. And if there's somebody out there, you know, that's watching that does a lot of tooling, chime in and let me know. Is that what you've experienced, or is there a different tip for keeping that border looking, you know, pretty clean? And I'm happy with this border here on this one. I've had a couple that, yeah, I was like, that's really not my favorite, you know, border finish. So I'll come back here once I get it cased and we're ready to start working in the field. Now on this basket weave, and the first time I tried doing it, it was hilarious. I threw it in the trash. That was, you know, some time back. But it seems like it'd be easy to figure out how to get, you know, the pattern in there right, but it's not easy. You can get yourself out of sorts with it. But the way I think of it is this one is down. In other words, a bevel is on this side of that line. This one's down, this one's up, this one's down, and so on. So what I find works best for me is I start a line and I take it all the way across, and I'll do the same on the next one. If this one's down, that means this one's up, just the same. This one's up, this one will be up, that one will be down, this one's down. So this is up, so I come over to here then, and I create this one being down. And, you know, if you end up with a method and you kind of follow that method, then I think you end up with a more consistent project when it's finished. So what I'll do on every one of them, I do one corner, other corner, and then I lightly tap in. So then I skip this one. This one is down, right? That one's up. If you want to check yourself, that one's down. But my point is, instead of like trying to, what works better for me, instead of trying to, you know, wander around out here. I've seen some people that, and I've done it that way, where I bevel this way, then this way, this way, this way, and I take a line that direction. But for some reason, I get out in there, and then next thing I know, I've got it confused. So I guess more than anything, find a method that works for you. Don't be afraid to play around and find one that works well for you. And then once you get it, try to do it the same way. And that's with a lot of things. You know, if I'm working on a belt, I try to do things in the same order every time. And it's more so like on handbags and stuff, because what will end up happening is you will, you know, just kind of go to the next step. And as a result of that, it could be that you needed to put a snap in, and then you forgot and got past that. So, you know, a methodology, I think, is a good way to go. So I'm going to continue doing this, and when I come to going the other way, I'll come back. But in reality, it's doing the exact same thing again. I got started down here to show you how that works. So we've got this piece of leather here is going over this, over and under that one. At the same time, this one is going under that one. That makes the basket weave. This is under that, this one's under that. So once we get one row set here, or we start setting a row, all we have to do, sometimes it seems like you can get lost in here, but if you set the right pattern and then you continue that, then it will be right. And that's why I don't like to wander around out here. I'll take this one row here across here. So it's up, I'm sorry, it's down. This one is up, goes under that one. So it should be the opposite of this other edge. So you have to figure what keeps it straight in your mind. But for me, once I know that I have these 3 tiles right, I'm just going to continue that process. So this one here is down, so it's going down under that one, coming up from under this one. And then from here, I skip over to 2 lines and set this one down. Come over here, do this one, then skip over one and to this far side. So I'm going to go ahead and continue this process across here and do that on each row. So once this row is done, all I need to do then is, if this one's down, that means this one needs to be down. Then I'll just take that pattern on across. It becomes a lot more defined with the next phase of tooling instead of just the beveling. I'll be back here in just a little bit. Next step, what we're going to do is define these bevels even further. So it should be easy to follow this pattern because you're just working on these bevels. And I'm going to use a vertical line thumbprint. If you use whatever the biggest one you got that'll work in the space. And just work your way across here, just kind of bumping up against that edge here, and then walk a few of these out. And it needs to be random. Because we're trying to make it look like rattan weaving here, and so this basket weave becomes defined by this. If I was going to do a lot of basket weave, I would probably get an additional one of these thumbprints and square off this back a little bit to make it you know, square back here. I think that would make it so you had less of these impacts here, because you're trying to clean up so you don't see a bunch of round circles here in the end here. Like I said, I just walk a few out, and it needs to be kind of random. And I just work down through here and just stick to the one side. It's quicker for me just to cruise down through here and make this happen. And then I'll turn the leather and work the other side. I'm quicker here than rotating over to here, plus I can see what I'm doing on this side better. So it just makes it more comfortable and for me quicker. And once again, it's about creating methods that work for you. And once you get that figured out, then go to town. And I've had some say, well, why don't you just, instead of using the bevel, just use the thumbprint. When you use the bevel, it tends to push this edge up a little bit here. It gives it a little bit of a curled look here. and that helps it look like it's going under there. And if you step on this edge, that's what I call that when I kind of catch that, you can always come back and pick it up here, and it pushes that up again. So if you've got a bunch of curved areas there, you know, from the back end of this thumbprint, you could come through and clean them up that way. And it pushes this up, which makes it kind of hourglass shape, which is what a basket, you know, can look like. Not all of them look like that. Once you get that done, go in that direction, and we just come back through it here, this direction. Doing the same thing. And I don't think it looks good to get, you know, all of this area out here done. I mean, you want some texture on it, and if you want more, you can always just take and slide your thumbprint on there, and it'll put some groove marks so that it looks like rattan, you know, basket weaving material through there. And if you work it too dry, you won't get as much definition, and I'm not getting as much definition as I'd like here. So I'll add a little bit more moisture to it. But then you end up with this piece here. Then you'll rotate this, and you'll start that process all over again, up and down these runs here. And that will create that, you know, the basket weave look. Keep your tool tipped up so that you don't end up, you know, mashing down too much of this area here. And once again, you can always come through and define that a little bit, clean that up a little bit. Let me catch this one here, and then we can see what it looks like. So now you've got the weave. This one's under that one's under that one. So let me finish this, and we're not quite done. We're going to put some decorative cuts in this, and that helps to further define it. And when I oil it, I believe these areas here will highlight some more. So don't forget to add moisture as you go. All right, so I think I'm finished. One way I can kind of look at it is I tip it up like this, and that pattern really becomes defined. And it helps me to eyeball down through there to see that I've got each of those hit. I've seen people leave it like this as done, but I think if you create these decorative cuts here, just a few, and the hardest thing about doing random is making it random, but if you create these decorative cuts, I think it makes the, you know, the weave look, you know, more real. You know, and like I said, try not to, you know, create the same type of pattern there. But I think, at least that's my feeling. What do you think? Does that make this pattern look better? Keep in mind, you need it to run straight across there, because if you've ever worked with basket weaving materials, and yep, I know that's another hobby that I've fiddled with a little bit. If you've ever worked with that, then you know that it's going to run true. But I think that helps the pattern. So I'll run through, clean that up a little bit. I'll do these decorative cuts. I'll let the leather dry out. It doesn't have to be completely dry, and we'll be ready to attach the back flaps there. If my pattern wasn't big enough that the tool would fit in there, I would have left a little bit bigger one there. Fits nice inside of that pattern there. So, front of the book and the back. I'll be right back. So here we are. I think it's looking pretty good. I'm going to oil it. That will further define the tooling. I'm thinking about antiquing it. I wanted to show what the leather is going to look like this is going to be on display, and I want to show how it was defined without the need of a antique. But I might, you know what, I may just antique like the back of it so that you can see the difference in how that looks. So either way, the next step on this is to install the material that makes the pouch on the back. And I went ahead and slicked down the inside here with Resin. The inside of all this is coated with Resin. And I'm going to take my #1 Ron's tool edger, and the leather that's going to make up the pouch, I'm just going to ease this edge here before I burnish that, because once I get it installed, it's going to be hard to burnish that edge. So that'll be the next step here, is I'm just going to ease this around here and burnish it. And this is vegetable tan leather, so it burnishes pretty nice. It's making a little noise because I had sealed that back, and it's not perfectly smooth there, but probably hard to see the sheen on there, but that's burnished. I'll do that there, and the same on this one. The other edges will be burnished once the cover is completed. The next thing I need to do is to mark where this goes around here. From here to here, and the same thing over here. All right, now that I've done that, I'm going to take my rougher, and I'm going to work on this outer 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch. I want the contact adhesive to bond well there. I'll do this around the perimeter and also the 3 sides of the pouch material. And you've probably heard me say before, but I put 2 coats on, allowing it to tack up between the coats. And then when it's tacked up after that last coat, then we can come back and assemble those. So I'll see you here just in a few minutes. All right, so the contact adhesive is applied and had a chance to set up. And we'll put these pouches on here. And the leather stretched slightly, not much, about 1/8 of an inch through the tooling. I'm going to try to get this piece here to stretch a little bit with that. So I'm going to set it on here, this corner. Get it attached there. And then I'm going to bring this up, match this up. I've got a sticker over here. It's funny. It came from Don Gonzalez's booth, and it says measure twice and stretch to fit. Okay. A lot of times I'll cut these extra long. I don't know why I didn't do it this time. I cut them extra long, and then once they are attached here, then I trim them to fit the size of the cover. Should have done that, but I didn't. Okay, so I think we're coming along. We got the pockets formed on the inside. Really, there's only a couple steps left. We need to sew around here, and I don't like just sewing the pouch or the pocket in. I'm going to sew all the way around here, one continuous time using a saddle stitch. And I want it to be in the middle. Now, I'm probably getting too particular here, but the middle would be there. But when you round this, it takes that look away from being quite the middle some. So I'm going to move it just ever so slightly. And then we'll go around here. So as I do the stitching, I probably overthink this as well. But this is the front. I want my stitches to be perfect on the front here. This is the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in this corner here and go around that direction and start here and come down here. I'll make sure that I line up with a hole here on this corner and over here. My start and stop will be in the saddle stitch will be over here, so that there'll be a little bit of a double back to lock that stitch in, and it'll be here where it's not visible. So the front will be just hopefully pristine stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and work my way around here with my stitching chisels, and once I finish with that, I'll come back when we're in the stitching pony over here, and I'm going to use black thread. I'm going to use black thread for a couple reasons. One is the burnish on this brown is going to lean towards black. So two, I probably am still going to put an antique finish on here, and typically I wouldn't do it until, or I wouldn't do it and then stitch. I would do it the other way around. But if I use black thread on here and I've got black antiquing, I don't think it's going to be a big issue. It'll take a little more work to clean the antique out around the stitches, but no more than here. And I still haven't convinced myself that I'm antiquing, so I'm leaving my I guess you'd say I'm leaving my options open. So I'll finish around here and we'll come back when I'm in the stitching pony over here. I appreciate you following along on today's video using this leather from Montana Leather, and it's a pre-dyed vegetable tan. All right, so I finished creating all of the stitching holes, and now I'm working on the stitching, just using a waxed braided thread in black, and stitching in a saddle stitch pattern. And I think it's looking pretty good. The stitches seem to be coming out good. So I'm going to finish working my way around here. Shouldn't take me very much longer. And when I get around to here, I'll do a couple of back stitches and then finish off my thread there. I picked there, let me tell you why I picked there. I picked there because it's not actually holding anything together. It's decorative at that point, so it doesn't have a lot of tension on it, or it's not, as I say, it's not really doing any work. It's just there to be pretty. And so even if we get a lot of tension on the inside flap of this book cover, it won't be pulling against where the thread finished off, so should be totally fine. So I'll finish that off. Just take me a couple more minutes here, and then I'll meet you over on the table there, and we're going to put a coat of oil on this and then make a determination whether or not I want to put a antique finish on here to further highlight the tooling. Appreciate you following along here. We'll be right back, and I'm going to oil it first, and then I'll do all of my edge work. And once I get all that done, the oil should be totally soaked in, and we can make that final determination, do the edge work, and put a coat of, probably use tan coat on this, and we'll be ready to ship this down the road. All right, so I went ahead. The color looks really flat here in this bright light, but it's actually pretty nice. I went ahead and did a little bit of initial sanding on my edges here. I have not done the round over yet. I'm going to go ahead and oil this, and then I'm going to do that work afterwards. Normally I don't do it that order, but I wanted to try it this way and see what kind of an effect I had. So I'm going to go ahead and round these corners off here. I guess one reason why I'm doing it that way is I'm wrapping up for the day in the shop here, and if I get oil on this, it'll have overnight to soak in and give me an idea what this color is going to look like, and I can decide whether or not I want to do an antique on this. I think we'll let this rest and soak in, and I'll take a look at it tomorrow and make a determination on whether or not I want to put a resist on it and maybe a little bit of a antique finish. I was thinking black, but now I'm wondering if I should get adventuresome. All right, so here's where we're at. And I went ahead and applied oil to this. The tooling is not as defined as I think I want, so I'm going to go ahead and antique that. But before I get to that point, I need to go ahead and work on the edges and get those burnished and ready to go. The other thing I did before I got to this point is I wet the liner a little bit, and you can probably see it's pushed up. I used a bone folder to clean these edges up here. In reality, I probably made my height of the book maybe a little bit tight. I backed off from 1/2 an inch extra to 3/4 of an inch, so that's 3/8 around here. I'd been better to have a 1/2 inch all the way around here, but it fits. But anyway, I wet formed that, so I want to give you that information. So let's burnish these edges now. I think a lot of people will do a bunch of sanding on the edge before they do the burnish. And my experience is sometimes that was a wasted effort because it burnishes well without it. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll do the burnish, then I'll maybe do a little bit of sanding here where I can see that I need to, and then I will, and then I'll redo my burnish. So all I've done is I set up and I did a good sanding of the edge to get them square. And that was pretty much a rough sanding. And then I ran the Ron's tool around here and just a little bit of water, that's it. Nothing else has been done to this edge here. And I think it's pretty good. I think what I'll do is I'll continue around doing that. I'll come back with some 220 sandpaper and hit this edge here where the seam is. There's a little bit of contact adhesive in a couple places here. I think that's limiting that, and I'll finish that burnish. After that, I'm gonna put a resist on here. I'm going to use tan coat. So I'll put tan coat on the whole thing. I'll let that dry thoroughly, and then I'll come back when we're ready for the next step. I thought there'd be some value in showing you this. So this corner here, if I get the right angle here, it's a little bit choppy. And so when I do the burnish, that shows to me. And I've said before, find the system that works for you, and then stick with that for yourself. So I find that after I do the first burnish on there, that it highlights any of these areas that maybe need a little more attention. So now when I do the burnish on here, that corner should be good. Much better. So, I mean, if you want to do that beforehand, I just think it's 6 1, half dozen of the other. To me, that first burnish highlights areas that I need to work on, and I can do that with a little bit of sandpaper and then come back and do the burnish again. All right, here's how it looks Edges are pretty good shape. I'll probably play with them some more there and burnish them some more. The field has been oiled. If you remember, this is pre-dyed leather from Montana Leather, and it's been oiled, and then I've got a coat of tan coat on there as a resist. I've decided I'm going to go ahead and antique this. I'm going to use the black and smear it in here. And I'll take it all the way out to the edge out here so that you know, the border doesn't look different. And I think it's got pretty good definition, but this may be displayed, you know, up higher at some point, and I think the antiquing will, you know, further highlight the tooling on here. So I'll apply this. Obviously, I'm just applying it with this dauber. You know, on something this large, especially, you know, if I had a series of, you know, 2 or 3 of these that I was working on, I might grab a piece of sheepskin and, you know, go at it with a lot more paste at one time instead of, you know, messing around this way. But you want to work it down into these grooves really well so that it's even throughout. So I'm going to get this worked in here. I'll let the antiquing sit on here for, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and buff it clean and see what we've got. So it's had a chance to dwell on here and dry up some, so we're just going to buff it off. We'll see what we come up with. I'm just using a pretty tired terry cloth rag here. It's interesting, my towels kind of go through a process of using them for different points, and then when they get down to this point, it's nearing the end of its usefulness here, and I'm just using it now to remove some of this glaze. I should mention I did not seal the flaps on the inside with tan coat, and partially it's in case I need to wet form those a little bit. I didn't want to have them sealed. It'd be a challenge to try to wet form it if you've got tan coat on there. And I did dry fit this once to the book. I used a bone folder on the inside of the flaps to kind of expand them a little bit and open up the corners. Keep in mind, depending on how much antiquing you want left behind is how aggressive you get at you know, removing the residue. If you want to leave more, you could also use, like I've done before, where I use a denim and wipe over it if it doesn't have as much definition to the tooling, and to leave more of it behind. This terry kind of reaches down in there. All right, I think it's looking pretty good. The antiquing helped highlight some of that. It's a little bit flat looking right now because of the paste on there. I'm going to let this dry for probably a couple hours. I'll come back, do one more light buffing on it, and we'll seal it with tan coat, and we'll be ready for the last details on this and attaching it. Tell you what, I think it looks pretty nice. I let it dry for a couple hours. I just took a dry towel and buffed off the remaining, I'll just call it residue. And I think we're ready to put a finish coat on it. Yeah, I think that looks nice. I still have not put any clear coat on these inside flaps, and I'm gonna wait and do that probably last. It's just in case I need to get more stretch out of this and I need to get this wet. So I'm going to go ahead and set up, and we're going to apply, I'm going to go with Resling. I know a lot of people don't like the shininess of it, but I think it'll help really set off the tooling here on this. So I'm going to work on the face here. I will catch these edges and get those sealed well. And I do spend a little bit of extra time on this basket weave trying to get the foam minimal on these, tiles of the basket weave. It's inevitable you're going to have some down here in the cracks and grooves, but if you get the majority of it, I've not had it to where there's like noticeable bubbles that I'm dealing with there. If you wanted less sheen, the tan coat, I think it would be fine for this. It's more of a satin finish, and the Resling is more of a semi-gloss or gloss finish. So we'll let that dry, and we'll be ready to fit it to the book. By the time I put the coat of clear on that inside flap on both sides, we'll be done. All right, we're pretty much ready here. Stick my bone folder in here and give this a little bit of a stretch so we're ready. Yeah, I went down to 3/8 of an inch on the border. I've done 1/2 inch before, but I thought maybe I could make it fit easily that way, and it will fit. But I think in the future I'll just stick to a 1/2 inch on there, and no sense in making this more difficult than it needs to be. I mean, really, in the end, what's another 1/4 inch in the height of the project? It wouldn't make any sizable difference anywhere, except for fitting the book in. And if you didn't want to flex this book around so much to get this other tab started here, you could go with smaller pockets here. I think the smallest I've done is like 2.5 inches. Let me tell you what. I think that's pretty nice. I'll just set up, I'll stick a piece of paper underneath here and put the clear finish on here. I won't even pull the book back out. Well, there you go. I tell you what, I'm really impressed with how this turned out. The Vaqueta leather, I think that's closer to how you say it, Vaqueta leather from Montana Leather is a pre-dyed vegetable tan leather. It's in 6 colors. So far, I've used 5 of the colors. I've got 1 color left to use, that's the turquoise. And I just think it tools nicely. I think the edges finish beautifully, a nice burnish on it. I think it came out really good. One of the first projects I did was in red, and that's the red there. This red was made, that's oiled and a clear finish. There's not any antiquing in that at all. Nice color definition. The brown, I got a little less of that, and I think it's possible because with this big of a pattern, I was worried about distorting the the shape of the book cover. So I maybe wasn't quite as aggressive in setting my stamp in here, but I think it turned out really nice. I ended up using the black antiquing to highlight it a little bit more. I tell you what, Montana Leather is going to have these on display up there with their leather. If it wasn't for that, I don't think I would give this one up. I'd probably keep that on my shelf, you know, just to remember the project. I may just have to turn around and make another one there. If I'm not filming and all that, it actually goes pretty quick, but I think it turned out nice. I appreciate you taking time to be with me today. I apologize. This is a long video. Maybe I should have broke it in two, and maybe I will. Maybe by the time you see this, it'll be a part 2, but I just think it really turned out beautiful. Appreciate you taking time to be at the shop today. Please like, share, and subscribe. More importantly, have a great day.